Hello, and welcome to the second posting of my student teaching video blog. This week, I spent a lot of time with the women's choir, basically doing warm-ups throughout the week for all of the ensembles, but I focused specifically with the women's choir. The women's choir is an interesting group. There's about 45 females in the choir, from freshmen to seniors. And the reason that the women's choir is so unique is that they're one of those choirs that will give you exactly what you ask them, which sounds like a dauntingly easy task, but is actually quite simultaneously gratifying and terrifying as a conductor and teacher, because every gesture, every word that comes out of your mouth needs to be carefully calculated, and also needs to be on the same field that the students are playing on. So it's very easy, especially when your teaching style is similar to mine, and it's very cerebral and comfortable in the philosophical corner rather than the practical corner. It's very easy to get tripped up, or to assume that a step is implied, or that a part of the content is already known by the students, and then have your lesson derailed by one or two members of the choir who just, for some reason or other lose track, even if it's not, them not paying attention, just basically they learning differently, or maybe they missed a day or whatever. So I had to tackle that problem in my approach with my warm-ups, especially earlier in the week, when there were some problems with that I had to get through by differentiating my teaching, which you can view in my teaching videos on the teaching video page of this section of the website. Another issue I had to wrestle with was the functionality of warm-ups. I've known choir directors as well as instrumental and orchestra directors who warm-ups are seen as kind of an inefficient way of tackling technique issues that should and honestly must connect to the repertoire or content of the course. But I know a lot of these directors will spend maybe 2-3 minutes on warm-ups, maybe every other rehearsal, because they see using the pieces for those purposes as more meaningful to the students. And on the radical edge of that, I've seen directors of choirs who have used warm-ups that last half or more of the rehearsal time, because they feel that the vocal technique and has that much impact on the sound, so that much is superior to the content of the repertoire, or the connection from students' identity to performance. Myself, I kind of fall more to the middle of the spectrum, but more to the lefter side of warm-ups can be very effective, but are not the focus of the rehearsal. So I had to kind of adjust my view on that with working with John and his choirs. The other big issue I had with working with the choirs this week with warm-ups was that of authenticity and how it affects the constructivist and critical ped classroom. At one point during the week, John gave me the challenge to stop being so nice, as he called it. And what he meant was, I was being inefficient by not being stern. And not necessarily stern in the sense of disciplinarian or totalitarian, but in the response of being a relaxed professional and expecting the choir to be relaxed professionals with me. I think my style was a little bit too nonchalant earlier in the week, and that impacted my teaching and my ability to tackle problems. Because I had so many metaphors and analogies and little jokes tossed in between my warm-ups and during my warm-ups, to spare my mind more time to sort through all of the possible solutions I was thinking about in reaction to my listening to the sound quality of the women. My warm-ups dragged on and on and on, and although they covered some good concepts, they didn't cover them in depth, and they weren't necessarily adding as much value as they could to the singer's knowledge and application of the skills learned from the choral boot camp lesson to their repertoire and to their daily musicking. So that was something that I struggled with because I didn't want to compromise my authenticity of who I am by becoming an archetype or a prototype of a different teacher, because I felt that that is, one, dishonest, and because of its dishonesty, immoral and possibly damaging to the critical pedagogical idea of constructing a reality between the teacher and the student. It kind of sets up a double standard, whereas if I'm not being honest with who I am and how I interact with them, how can I expect them to be honest with me and honest to themselves in their own musicking? But as I went on, I tried John's method on Friday, and I found that it actually boosted the focus of the group, and that I wasn't completely out of myself. I was just myself in a different context. And I think that worked. And I'm looking forward to experimenting with that again and living outside of my comfort zone a little bit so I can progress as a teacher. The only other implications that I had throughout this week were my use of analogies. As a big fan of the Animaniacs and the Muppets and fun education, I use a lot of analogies, metaphors, and just kind of like funny anecdotes in my teaching, and I always have a smile on my face, and I think that that does wonders when I'm teaching general music, especially when I was with Derek Cressman in my middle school practicum. I think that was one of my biggest strengths. However, in the choral classroom, those little, idiosyncrasies can be huge gaps in efficiency and in time, which is a huge necessary component in such a performance-driven environment. And also the analogies sometimes don't work in this environment because you're dealing with a larger amount of students who may not have the context to realize the analogy versus the technique or the content that it is applying to. So I definitely saw John's point with my use of analogies, and I need to figure out when to differentiate when I can use my analogy and when the analogy is a little bit too far out there or a little bit too superfluous to put in at that moment. I think by Friday I definitely improved with my warm-ups. I was always very comfortable teaching up in front of the group, but with my attention deficit disorders, it was hard for me to focus on specific things or just to listen to the choir and react because I was thinking of too many things at one time. So I found that on my notebook I just wrote very, very simple prompts at the advising of John, and on Friday that worked wonders, absolute wonders. And I finally found the balance between the intellectual intangibles of what I'm doing and keeping it simple enough so that the warm-ups are actually warm-ups and not the pieces in different contexts. I think I was using, at the beginning of the week, I was using the warm-ups too much as the rehearsal and too much of the content rather than exercises to warm the choir up and remind them of the vocal technique and the content that we had gone over in choral boot camp, as well as to awaken their voices and their focus onto the rehearsal at hand. I'm looking forward to working with the choirs this upcoming week in the same location and seeing if I can improve more, as well as having my first supervised observation from Professor Cape, and I'll update you in a week.